Woo! Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick. I'm Kirk Henderson, joined by Josh Bowe. As always, we are editors and writers over at MavsMoneyball.com. We are late tonight, and it's the first time in a long time that it is my fault. So I'm sorry about that. We always guess when we schedule one of these live, and my son was annoying at bedtime and took a little longer to finish what we were reading. So, Josh, how are you?
Oh, hey, I'm doing all right. I know how you feel with the bedtime. We talk in Slack about bedtime. That's just a fun phase for any little one. So I don't know. We're here. We got to talk about some stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you want to talk about first?
So, I mean, there's not much to really talk about.
No, I'm putting it all on you.
Yeah, but so news, like Mark Stein broke the news that Luka was basically re-upping with Brand Jordan. I guess that makes sense. You know, he's got two distinct shoes at this point. He's had a couple of specific, like a couple of Jordan colorways that were like the Luka Doncic one. I own this one gaudy pair that he wore during the rookie sophomore game. I want to say it was from his rookie year, but overall the Luka shoes have been pretty fascinating in the sense of you see them a lot of places. They're very popular with kids. I mean, granted I live in the Dallas area, so maybe we're probably a little bit biased in that regard, but
right.
They've got a pretty good entry point for shoes, like $110, I think was what the Luka ones were, which is kind of on the low end, because like LeBron's get up to like $200. Paul George shoes were probably about the same prices as Luka's, but like the player specific ones are always really interesting just because you kind of use them as a bellwether for how popular the athlete might be. That's why like the Paul Georges were odd, but they're kind of a shockingly popular shoe. The Kyries were in my experience, up until he moved on to really Nike moved on from him, but his Nikes were among the most popular shoes outside of Kobe's. And so to see Luka's, there was all sorts of like colleges that had a lot of editions where they would get specific colorways. And then there's that great Twitter account, Luka Don Kicks, that has a lot of cool stuff about the shoes. And I don't really necessarily know what it means, other than the fact that I think that Luka, quite understandably, has a reverence for Jordan specifically, and it's a little thing, but we've seen a couple of really incredible Luka Jordan interactions. Now, granted, Michael Jordan seemed to be having the time of his life at the 75th anniversary All-Star game, but he shared like that long hug with Luka, and I don't know. I just think it's kind of a cool relationship. And it's one that's going to continue on, in the form of this shoe deal. I need to see more of the Luka 2s. From what I've seen from people who have them, they are really nice. Like Dalton Triggs, big guy like us, and he likes like the wide, like they're a wide shoe, but they're not quite as heavy as like a LeBron. So, it's nice. I like the brand affiliation. I don't know, like I'm just of the age where Nike really started to break through in like a pop culture-y way when I was in middle and high school. And I'll never, even though I've owned some different stuff, like I'll always be kind of a Nike guy. And obviously, like
that's
I think
me too.
Yeah, like Nike owns Brand Jordan, I'm pretty sure.
Yep, they do.
Or at least and so it's like it's kind of like an independent subsidiary. Some of the stuff Brand Jordan does, I'm like, ugh, it's ugly. But I've liked what they've done so far, and that's just that's enough for me.
Yeah, I wonder if this is. I'm curious, like re-signing with Jordan because he's pretty much their. He's their guy.
So it's I want to
Because I
say
mean,
it's
there's
him.
Zion.
Is Tatum a Jordan guy or a Nike guy? Let me Google
Oh, I
that.
can't remember. Either way, he's. I'm pretty sure he's like.
They're
He's,
Jordans.
yeah,
So Team Jordan has been getting a lot like because the Ja Morants are Nikes, but so you got Zion, you have like that's a pretty good
yeah,
three-headed beast like there in terms of popularity.
yeah. And I wonder if like I don't notice like have you know I don't notice guys signing with Nike lately. I wonder how much of that is like because like Nike is LeBron.
Well,
Like, there's no point. Like, why would you sign with Nike? Because it's all
Nike doesn't promote their athletes,
yeah.
if we're being quite candid. Like when 10, 12 years ago, Nike, like, do you remember?
I mean, Dirk
You know,
was a Nike athlete, and you wouldn't have known it.
they used to do incredible ad campaigns around their
Mhm.
their athletes, and now Nike just doesn't really advertise athletes, and that may be because they have such market dominance that they don't care. I'm realistically
Yeah,
not the
no,
guy to speak
me
on this.
neither.
But I like the stuff. Like I started to get really into shoes after going to summer league. But it's fun to consider. I think it's good for Luka. More money in his pocket, more, if he's with a company that he's happy with, then
Yeah,
good for him.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, someone in the chat saying Dirk was Nike, and yes, it was one of his two sponsorships, Nike and a bank from Germany. And that was
My
all he
great
had.
white whale, Brian, and it was Brian Roby in the chat who did this, there was a Dirk edition of Hyperdunks
Oh yeah,
that were
remember those?
so, and I don't know if they were cool because they were cool or if they were cool because I wanted Dirk shoes, but I can't even remember what they look like, but I remember them. And it was just, they're like a holy grail item because I don't think they were actually made for mass consumption. It's like all the different, do you call them player editions? Like the PEs?
Yeah, like a player colorway kind of
Yeah,
thing.
like my friend Tyler does a lot. Like he knows a lot more about this stuff. And then there's like some of these guys really, that cover the team know a lot more about this than me. I just like it from like a consumer perspective. I'm not really in on the shoe game in that respect. Oh yeah, Marcio says in the chat there was a Dirk Air Force One. I remember that too. But I'm also partial to Air Force Ones. Like just generally, I love those shoes. So I don't know. That was kind of like one of the two main bits of news. And then the other one happened a little earlier today, where the McGee waiving, like Shams Charania said it's basically imminent. Which then news broke immediately after that the Sacramento Kings would be interested in picking him up, which just tickled me to pieces. Like
And it's official too, by the way. The Mavs sent out the press release.
okay.
Yeah,
I missed that earlier.
it's not just a report. It's happened. He has been waived.
Okay. Well, and I was meandering. So another reporter that I speak with regularly, like national reporter, basically told me that McGee was out of the league until the Warriors sort of swooped him up as a vibes guy, and now he's just gotten more contracts. And he's a brilliant guy. Like honestly, like JaVale McGee is a really smart guy. If you follow his YouTube stuff, he's an interesting guy. I can see why maybe the players liked him after having watched some of that stuff over this last week, just because it's summer and I'm a true sicko. I don't know. I sort of, and this is just pure speculation from game stuff, but I have to wonder if Luka didn't really care for JaVale. There were a lot of incidents over the course of the year where he was just like, the look on his face was, Luka's not like that. He was always a guy, like he'd get mad, but not at people. It was more at things. And there was like 3 to 5 situations I distinctly recall where it was like, oh no, oh, this is ugly, and I didn't even think like the JaVale and he played that badly together. Just kind of like
Oh
incident.
no, they did. I mean, that starting lineup with Luka, it was bad. It was pretty bad. And what's funny is the only other time I can remember Luka getting mad at another teammate like that was DeAndre Jordan, which is like the same archetype, like big man that can't shoot. That's supposed to be like your defensive rim runner guy, not doing the job. And that was probably, kind of what it came down to. And like, he had those weird, like he catches the ball and flips.
How many big men have we watched that love doing that? It's like big men who want, somebody made the point in the last show that I had on Friday that it's like Dwight Powell the reason he keeps getting chances is Dwight Powell doesn't do the stuff he's not supposed to do. Whereas
Right.
like DeAndre Jordan, JaVale McGee, all these big guys that are like, hey, I'm good at basketball. And it's like, well, of course you're good at basketball. You're in the NBA, but you're not Luka Doncic good at basketball.
Right. It's like, have you seen you can find this for like every guy, but have you seen like clips of Kevon Looney in high school?
Yes.
He looks like Kevin Durant. Like he's on the perimeter, he's hitting threes and like driving. And it's like,
I mean, even
all these guys are that good.
There was like an open run gym this week of JaVale McGee just drilling threes. And like, it's like, of course, these guys are like the most skilled players alive.
Yeah. But when you get to the highest level, you got to find a role, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, so I think maybe we circle back. We'll see how much life, like I was briefly sort of considering the alts, you know, I made a statement. I want to circle back to this because I'm actually thinking about, we had a YouTube commenter, person's probably not living again, or not listening again, but we had a great comment that was essentially like, you guys really seem to know what you're talking about, but you're far too cynical for me. Good luck. One, I really appreciate that kind of candid comment because it's like, I understand this. Like, you only have X amount of time to listen and watch stuff. So why would you not? And so it's like, that's in my head, and that I don't want to be negative for the sake of negativity. Like, that's not any fun. But so if we'll see how long we get into this, but I had an idea of something you and I want to talk about, but maybe we'll circle back to it in the end. There were a couple more things that popped up that I've been looking around like while we've been talking. Paul George, who is, in my opinion, Jason Gallagher, hope you're not listening to this. I think Paul George is probably the best player podcaster at the moment. He does, like, he seems to like ask really blunt questions and say, and he's an active player, and frankly, he's a higher level of star than JJ Redick was. But I just like, and granted, that's like the top two. There, a lot of these players are actually, you know, it shouldn't be a surprise. They're charismatic guys, but Paul George had some interesting things to say about Luka. One of which that he's like talking about how nasty of a trash talker Luka Doncic is. Like wouldn't repeat some of the things that Luka said during trash talk, which incredible. Love that. And then the second thing that he said is he says, shit, Luka's the GOAT. Luka's not next up. Luka is now. Like Luka is for real now. And I find that interesting because Luka has destroyed Paul George. Like if there's a superstar defender, and so I think it's kind of like, I think it's like really cool, that it's just like you didn't have to say anything like that. And just to be kind of that candid about it, because it's like somebody beats my ass, I'm not really sure I'm going to be like, hey, that guy really good at ass beating. But I just, that level of like openness from a guy. Somebody said in a group chat that I'm in, it's like, is he doing the Grant Williams thing where he's just like, hey, I'd like to play in Dallas, which I thought was great. Yeah, Brian in the chat says he's a really good conversationalist who doesn't let his ego get in the way of good conversation, and that's a fantastic summary, Brian. Thank you for that.
So I wonder if you talked about like, you don't know if someone whooped you and you'd be willing to give them praise afterwards. It probably helps though that the Clippers still won each of those playoff series that they played. If the Mavericks had beaten them in one of those, I don't know. Maybe his tune is a little different.
Sure.
But yeah, you got a front row. Like, I mean, him and Kawhi Leonard, it was like, oh, those are like two of the best wing defenders in the league, and he went through them like Swiss cheese. Like it was just, that's kind of something with Luka is usually like, guys aren't watching Real Madrid. Like it's one of those things where they don't know until they know. Like Draymond was a similar way where I think he didn't. He had a lot of praise for him after he played him. I think these guys, it's one of those things where it's like, well, who's this kid from Slovenia? Like they don't know where Slovenia is. Like, I mean, they don't know where Slovenia is. They don't, they just know he's some kid from Europe. Like, and then you don't know until he plays. And it's like, okay, is he a flash in the pan? And now it's like, okay, this is real. This is happening. So it's just kind of different for a guy coming overseas compared to like guys coming up in America, AAU. Like there's just a different paths of getting that kind of recognition or level of respect from your peers.
Yeah.
It's just different.
All right. So before we move on to kind of the second half of the show, we'll talk a little bit of World Cup. I wanted to first, ask folks who haven't, go ahead and like the stream if you can down at the bottom. We're inching closer to regular season, and I sort of can't wait. I'm like at once terrified, but also can't wait to get back on our grind because I am more productive in my regular life when I know I have to do this stuff. And I end up being more exhausted, but I'm really looking forward to the regular season in a way that I'm looking forward to writing and seeing what the people of Mavs Moneyball come up with. But if you guys, like this show, we record after every game. We record, and then and sometimes Josh joins. I record kind of a interview show, bring people up on here just like Josh, because the software is really easy to use. You can do it from your phone or a computer, and just talk ball. And we're not the most polished people. We're still, Josh is an outstanding analyst. I'm still much more of a fan than him, and so I think we really have fun overreacting to the game to game stuff. I mean, I've gotten a kick out of kind of the rise and fall of the Texas Rangers, where it's like if you're watching this stuff, like game to game, living game to game is fun. It just is. Like, it's emotionally exhausting, but if you're going to invest, you might as well have a good time. And we want you guys to consider subscribing to the show and hanging out with us as often as possible, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different for us because we have to talk about it and consume it and do analysis and stuff like that. But if you're a fan, like this is the fun part, is watching games, and if your team loses, you get mad. If they win, you get happy. That's the process.
That's right.
And we're here for you.
Okay, so now I'm going to leave, and then one more thing, and then I'm going to insert some ads on our podcast, like the one where you're listening to the audio show. If you are listening on the audio show, if you could do us a favor and actually not fast forward through the ads. We get paid through ad impressions, and it's a little thing, but 15, 20, 30 seconds more out of your podcast day, if you could just listen to those, we would very, very much appreciate it. We'll probably be doing some more live reads in the future. And if any of our listeners at all out there are interested in sponsoring our YouTube show here, we can do that. We are open for that. We can do lots of different things. Tell if you know anybody that's interested in that sort of advertising, just let us know here. All right, so I'm going to insert our podcast ads here, and then we'll be right back after a short break. And thank you for dealing with that, YouTube listeners. But this is just the way these sorts of things go. So we're going to talk about the World Cup, which there's a lot of stuff we can talk about. So Christopher Gardner in the chat says, "Can you talk about Shea?" And yes, I can talk about Shea. So, Josh, have you seen what this guy has done in the World Cup?
I'm going to be honest with everyone. I have not watched a single minute of World Cup basketball.
So it's on ESPN Plus, and
I don't have it, and it's one of those things where I cannot justify. Well, it'd be one of those things where I can maybe make the justification if I didn't also have to wake up at like 4 a.m.
I'm not
going to be up. It doesn't matter. Don't worry.
Some of these games are on at 7:30 to 7:30 to 10.
I'm not going to watch.
You're still not coherent.
Yeah, because I've got that's dropping kids off at daycare, and like by the time I'm usually not settled until maybe 9 or 9:30,
sure.
And maybe there's some games going on.
Well, and the games will continue on, and they'll continue to get tighter. So we're still in world play. So,
but I've watched some highlights, and I've seen that Shea is kind of he's that dude.
Shea didn't score any points in the first half of one of their games and scored 31 in 20 minutes because these 10-minute quarters are what they are. It's interesting. Of course he would say this, but Theo Pinson said as recently as today on his podcast that Luka has been unquestionably the best player in the World Cup. It is a question. Shea is doing outrageous stuff. Now, I clearly still think Luka is better, but this Canadian team is detonating on teams. They're just running through, and Dwight Powell's a part of that.
Yeah, Dwight Powell's starting for a team that's playing well.
What do you know, guys? He's setting good screens and making things happen for his team. He still does. This is my favorite part. For people who are less familiar with Dwight Powell on Twitter, they're like, "What is that guy doing?" At least once a game, and I'm just like, "Welcome to the Dallas Maverick experience." Because that, for every good Dwight play or every 10 good Dwight plays, you get one just boneheadingly or just head shakingly awful boneheaded play. And they're just incredibly weird. Yeah, Christopher in the chat says, imagine if they had Jamal Murray and Andrew Wiggins. And I'll tell you what, those two are probably mad they're not there right now.
Yeah, because they look great.
It's really something. It's really something. There was like this. Now I don't want to have this discussion because I don't want to piss off international viewers, but there was like this brief discussion during the week about like this American track star who
Oh no!
just kind of like he meandered into the discussion. No, we're not going to talk about it.
I know. Okay.
He meandered into the discussion somehow where he's like, this guy's like a gold medal winner, and he just kind of starts talking about like, pains me that the NBA calls themselves world champions, blah 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 blah. And I've just kind of been thinking about it in the context of these international competitions. And what I see is like there's something like 60 guys in the FIBA World Cup right now that play NBA basketball or have played NBA basketball. I mean, it's amazing watching some of these international teams. The Canadian team is probably right behind the United States. And if I'm being honest, I think they might beat the United States in a head-to-head matchup just because I think Shea is that much more of a guy than Anthony Edwards. And I think Steve Kerr gets too cute by half in the United States stuff. But yeah, that was an easy segue to talk about Dwight Powell just for a little bit, and that he's playing meaningful basketball in the World Cup. And so that does give me a minute to talk about the second. I've only seen, I missed the opening match, the opening group play match with the Slovenians, but I did catch the second game against Georgia. And in an odd set of circumstances, friend of the program and podcast guest here, and also co-host of the 77 Minutes in Heaven, the worst named Dallas Mavericks podcast on the market over there at The Athletic. Dave Dufour is one of their coaches. So it's like, I knew this because I learned about it at Summer League, but it's still wild to see his big bald head sitting on the bench. And the Georgian team was enormous. It was the size disparity was like, I don't really remember a matchup quite like that wasn't, because it's two very, very good teams. And that was just something else to see. Luka might have played, and this feels like I'm kind of prisoner of the moment stuff, but it was one of the best offense-defense games I've ever seen from him. Like, he played fantastic defense, and it wasn't just because he got 3 steals. He was moving, he was doing, like, he tried to take a charge at one point, which was hilarious. But the Slovenian team, they have some size issues, which can lead to rebounding issues, and they just executed their game plan better. And then Luka Doncic was the guy. It was incredible. I had a great time watching it.
It's kind of funny how this Slovenian team feels like the pre-Kyrie trade Mavericks, and just that like lack of size, lack of reliable co-stars, so to speak. Especially,
but they got guys willing and who want to take the big shots. I'm not going to try to say some of their names because I'm going to butcher it, but they have at least 2 dudes that definitely think they're making every shot they take.
Yeah, is it Goran's brother, Zoran?
No, it's a guy. The guy's name that starts with a P is one of them. He has, and then there's he has blonde tips, which is my wife was just cackling at 7:30 in the morning.
Okay,
because it's like a 30 something man with blonde hair that's clearly dyed. But it was, I love the when they get going, when Slovenia, and this is all these teams, but when Slovenia gets going, they play with this just sort of like visceral swagger. This guy, Prepelic, and I don't want to mess up the name because the announcers on the FIBA broadcast were so bad, and it was just painful to watch. I really thought Luka was going to start an international incident just by sort of like destroying Goga. He was the big Pacers center for a while, big thick beard. I love it. They play again tomorrow morning. We're recording tonight. They play again tomorrow morning at 7:30 or 6:30 Central Time. So if I'm up with the dogs, I'm probably just going to turn it on. I love it, man. I'm having a great time.
No, it's fine. If it was a different time zone, the morning is tough. Like, I would almost rather be like, if it started at like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. Like,
you do it.
I'm more of a night owl, so it's easier for me.
I'm more of a I never get to fucking sleep, so I'm just gonna awake and be awake and watch stuff. But then we probably should have done this next, but there's Team Australia, and they got something, man. They do. They're gonna be They're going to be worth watching. Are going to be worth, we have Josh Green, who kind of, I'll just say that like the Josh Green, he's having a very Josh Green World Cup.
Where he's invisible for one game and then incredible the next game.
Yeah, he had a breakout performance against Japan with 15 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 steals in like 21 minutes. He shot 2 of 4 from deep and actually made free throws. So
yeah,
it's
and
something.
he had that elbow injury, so that I think the Australian coach said after this game, I saw someone tweet it, that like the game before this one, I can't remember who they played. He came off the bench and didn't really do all that much, and then the coach after this game was like, that was purely like bringing him back from injury. Like they were ramping him up, and he was like, we are committed to him being in the starting lineup and like being involved. So like he kind of went out of his way to well, I don't know if he went out of his way. I'm sure someone asked him a question about Josh Green, but he was very effusive with his praise and commitment to him being a big part of their World Cup. So that's important. That's cool for me. Like honestly, like the numbers are the numbers.
Yep.
I just want to see him I just want to see him get like 20 minutes a game or more in these World Cup games, because I just want to see him play more. Like it's just, that's kind of been his thing for these first 3 years, is just got to keep ramping up and get consistent playing time, and hopefully the rest follows. It was just a little disappointing to see playing like 13 minutes, 14 minutes. It's like, what's going on here? And I guess the injury is part of that. So
and then there's
the barrier was cool.
So I have a embarrassing admission. Dante Exum's name, I just lose it, and I can't remember his name. I remember where he was drafted. I remember where he played, but I'm like, who's the other guy that we have? Oh, it's Dante Exum. So I'm on the Dallas Mavericks roster page because I was just like briefly having an old person moment. ESPN has Josh Green listed at 6'7". Like on what plane? Like, and then it says Dante Exum is 6'5". Like Exum is bigger than Josh. What are we doing? Anyway, Exum has been, woo, bub. I am cautiously optimistic about him. I'm not like superstar minutes or anything, but like opportunity to regularly contribute minutes, excitement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he didn't really have a great game against Japan. What was it? It
was the previous game where he was basically he scored or assisted on a bunch of stuff in a row where it just really looked like he had control of the game.
Yeah. Seems like they trust him.
Yes,
to be on the floor for big moments, which is pretty.
And that sort of thing is fascinating to me, because that's where who do you trust in a big moment with the Dallas Mavericks moving forward? And at the moment, I think a lot of guys are going to have to prove themselves.
Yeah, and especially with the fact that he's still able to get again, these are 40-minute games, so readjust your minutes expectations, but the fact that he's still able to get 16, he's averaging 18 minutes a game through 3 games, and Australia has Josh Giddey,
great players,
Patty Mills,
they're great
Joe
team.
Ingles. Like they got a lot of guys that can kind of do things that he does in terms of being like a ball handling point guard, defensive guy. Like they've got guards, they've got guys that play his position that are starting ahead of him, and the fact that he still finds his way into getting minutes, I think, and they're winning those minutes that he's playing. Like I think that says a lot about his floor game and kind of how much faith and trust they have in him.
So we got 2 comments that I think that are interesting in the chat. One from, I don't want to butcher my man's name, Marcio. I hope I'm saying it right. Worry about him staying healthy. I think that's completely fair, given his history. An ACL tear really took it out of him, but we're not relying. The Mavericks aren't going to rely on Exum. Everything from Exum at this point is a nice bonus. So that's something that we're into. And then Mahalo says, and I'm hoping I'm saying that name right. He says he was big during the finals with Partisan KK, and that just being able to play in some of these crazy European finals stuff where the crowds are just so much better than the American ones. I'm looking forward to that. I'm really, really looking forward to that. So it's just, if he gets any opportunity to play, I think Jason Kidd will like him. It's nice. And so here's the next fun part. I don't know if this is still the case, because the way this group seedings play, when they go into the next round, there is an opportunity that Luka plays Australia, which I I might make you wake up for that one just because get to see Luka on live television do like the I am the captain now like thing to Josh Green on television. Now here's the sneaky thing that I'm going to be petty and correct on. You know who's been bad at the World Cup? Bible.
Yeah.
Now it's a different form of basketball, but it's like everything else where I've been on this kick lately where it's like, if you don't watch a guy and you don't know much about a guy, you don't got to say whether you think the guy's good or not. I honestly hadn't watched a ton of Thibault, but every single Sixer fan who I like and actually think is not crazy, because there are a lot of Sixers fans, said that this guy was like actively meh, and that his gambling allowed, like, he was protected by Embiid basically, and then he's and so that happened. But neither here nor there. The Mavericks moved past him. I mean, it probably would have been nice to have the additional wing depth to have Thibault, but but it also means they would have played him,
right?
So
those like, minutes have to come from somewhere,
mm-hmm. and it's tough. I'm glad they didn't sign him. Is where I'm gonna land.
Yep, me too. I mean, just like I said, more for the love of God. Like they're gonna probably extend him soon. Like, you have to shit or get off the pot with Josh Green in terms of him being like your starter, like that you want to commit to going forward. Yep. Either
That's
that
true.
or you have to trade him. And the idea that like Thibault would like siphon off like 5 minutes a game from like Green's chances, like that was just like, I didn't like the idea of that.
So I wanted to give a quick shout out. If you're on Twitter, there is my friend. I met him at Summer League at the Mavs blog on Twitter. I love that he's at the Mavs blog, but he doesn't actually have a blog. He has a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is the same thing at the Mavs blog. He has more subscribers than we do. So, me shouting him out does one thing, but he's been doing a lot of FIBA coverage, which I'm grateful for it, but I also hope he doesn't get shut down because FIBA is extremely litigious. But if you want to give him a follow and watch, he's doing a lot of the like clipping of stuff that's happening in these games. And if you're missing them, that's where you can see some of the highlights. So
yeah, that's been helpful. I've definitely seen him retweeted into my timeline a couple of times. And as someone, like I said, as someone it's difficult for me to get to these games at the hour that they're played at. Any highlights, clips, breakdowns, always appreciated.
Yep. Well, so we're at about a half hour. Oh, this is a good comment, so I'm going to share it just because I think it's worth a brief discussion. Vroom in the chat says, Mavs need to seal the deal with go get Jarrett Allen. In an ideal world, yeah. I just don't think the Mavericks want to expend what it would take to get him.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I mean, it might happen during the season where they look at the roster and they're like, all right, we really do need a real center. But it's something else. Oh, this is another good one. Someone in the chat says, can we talk about France? France has poor France. If they were not hosting the Olympics next year, they might not get to go because they lost their opening two games.
The World Cup.
They got destroyed by Canada, and then Latvia with Kristaps Porzingis there and rooting on his countrymen, which is so fucking cool. Like I've criticized KP so much over the years, but like him being there when he didn't have to be, I think it speaks a lot to what is important to him. And so watching him with his like begrizzled beard, I saw this one clip of like the camera was on him as they were, and then it was like on top was the game, and you just like watching his face, the emotions when the France wasn't able to seal, to come back and win was really something else. Had a great time. Just good for them. Good for Latvia and LOL France. I say that simply because next year at the Olympics, the French could have Rudy sitting on the bench with our guy down in San Antonio, Victor Wembanyama, and also naturalized dual citizen Joel Embiid. Which
laugh at him all you can is basically what you're trying to say.
Right. Because I mean, if I'm those guys, I play like Embiid at small forward and just like throw all three of them. But like Rudy was just, they're just games where it's just like, I'm really glad the Mavericks never went all in on Rudy because when he's bad, he's awful. He's just awful.
Yeah. Cause I mean, he's, it's his archetype of player has kind of a ceiling, and then, like, if it's not working, like, he doesn't have like, he is who he is, you know what I
He
mean?
had one shot in the game, I think. One shot. And it's just like, you can't be that big and that useless on one end of the floor. You just can't.
Again, this is why, like, I don't like spending money on, like, I don't spend money on centers unless they're like that Embiid yoke, like, unless they can do stuff, like, you can. This is why Dwight Powell is around and still keeps getting contracts, because it's like, I guess I'd rather pay, people are like, I'd rather have Powell at 10 million than, I mean, Gobert might be the worst contract in the NBA right now. Maybe him or his teammate Karl Anthony Towns. I don't know.
That's right.
Not sure which one. So.
All right, so we're gonna get off for the night. I'll probably be back Friday. We have kind of a lively show. It was like an hour and 15-minute show with all sorts of people coming up to come hang out. And I had a great time. So we'll probably try to do that again, because I'm taking a half day Friday. And so please be willing to join us in there. Bring your questions, bring your comments. Like, if you just have a take you want to get off, I am happy to just step back and let you cook. This is a fun opportunity to hang out and talk a little ball during the dead zone of the NBA. Josh, do you have any fantasy football ahead of you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm basically only in one league now, and we draft this weekend. It's the league I've been in since like 2000 and I don't know, since junior high, really.
That's outstanding.
So not everyone is. There's only like, I think like 4 or 5, maybe 6 of us that have been there since the beginning, but yeah, it's pretty important. I will say this. I've never won a fantasy football championship, and I won not last season, but the season before. And I have to admit, like fantasy football used to like actively stress me out. Like, I really cared about it. And now that I've won, I'm like Dirk the year after he won the title, like that 2012 year after the lockout. Like, I'm just cruising. It's cool. Like, no worries. Like, I finally reached the mountaintop. I'm okay.
I like it. I'm ridiculously addicted, and I don't have the time. Like, my wife is so mad at me because I had drafts this week, and like, we're starting a kitchen renovation. And so it's like, there's all this other stuff going on. And I'm like, my dog just started like wanting to play, throwing herself at my computer when I was trying to draft. And I like mistakenly picked Jonathan Taylor in the end of the first round because going nuts, and I just didn't have time. And she's like, it's just stupid fantasy football. I'm like, yeah, but you've seen how I get about basketball, in which I'm not playing in. So it's like, why does this not surprise? Anyways, I think that's about it. So we'll get on out of here and let people get back to their evenings.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, guys. Kirk Anderson, Josh Bowe, please like, subscribe, send us emails. We do have the great Pod Maverick podcast at gmail.com. I really like getting emails. I will answer questions to start shows. I will also field complaints if you think we suck. I do like interacting with most, just about everybody I come in contact with here, because it's just people wanting to talk basketball. We will be back a little later in the week. Thanks so much for spending part of your week with us, and we will talk to you soon. Go Mavs.